been mentioned, let me start with the area of the reshuffling by the president of Rwanda and the president of Cameroon. And as has widely been said, and analysts have observed, is that it's a response to the coups that have happened, 8 in number already, especially for countries that were colonized by the French. And so Rwanda and Cameroon, who are also Francophone countries, have decided to make a move in what is believed to be, a proactive measure to preventing an occurrence in their countries. It's already been established that President Paul Biya of Cameroon has been president since 1982, whilst President Kagame has been there for over 20 years. What one would imagine, as has been said a number of times this week, is that these presidents, who are sit-tight presidents, sit-tight leaders in their country, would, as a response, begin to put measures in place to strengthen institutions and even start to look out for a way out to retire. So it demonstrates that even with the coups, it's not enough, measure, it's not enough statement to persuade these leaders to leave office. Instead, what they've decided to do is to reshuffle their military to ensure that they continue to sit tight. Even President Paul Biya at over 90 years old. And so we must begin to ask questions amongst ourselves here on the African continent. What is wrong with the style of leadership and government on the African continent? Why has the sit-tight style of leadership continued to thrive? It's because of things like this, where a president or a leader who is democratically elected in many cases, in fact, if you look at many of their elections, let's even talk about that, they're usually marred with irregularities. So the process to gaining power in itself is flawed. And when the process is flawed, it begs belief as to how the leader will rule. It is almost impossible for the leader, or it is in very rare cases, that the leader or the president will obey the rule of law when he gets into office. Because when you're campaigning and you're during electioneering season where you don't have the power of the state, you take on power by any means possible. And so, first of all, the process by which our leaders get elected, we must check that process and strengthen it. A lot of times, the president oversees or has influence, huge influence on the electioneering body. We have electioneering bodies across the country. So, if we're going to look at that, it's the process, first of all, of getting in there. And once they get there, the same institutions that they weaken are the same institutions that will work against them, as we've seen in all the countries where coups have taken place. Let's talk about Western and international interference, because some of these coups are actually sponsored by Western interests. So when we talk about coups not being the best option, some people say, oh no, it's time to take the power back. But again and again, we have seen from history that the people end up suffering. Coups are usually not with good intentions. They are not noble. They're not done because they want to. That's the narrative until the military coupist or a hunter takes over. Then you see that it was just a matter of interest not aligning. And that's why you will see that many of those things happen with people who have enjoyed and benefited from the leaders themselves. The presidential guards, those who have worked with the president closely, have benefited immensely. Look at their lives. So for those who are rejoicing and celebrating now, look at the lives of the people. Ngwame is very rich. What's the source of his wealth? So a corrupt man taking on power forcefully in an illegal manner, and you're expecting the best from him, you're expecting good, it's hardly going to work. And so the people must then insist that the leaders that they elect strengthen institutions and obey the rule of law. That's why we keep talking about it. And when in some cases, when we talk about strengthening institutions, the judiciary, the legislature, and the other arms of government, people say, oh, it's attacking the present day government. No, it is protecting the nation. It is protecting nations such that we don't have incidents like this. And so the response from these leaders demonstrates that they are not yet serious about the issue of governance and democracy in their countries. They are looking for ways to ensure that they continue to perpetrate illegality. That is what this has demonstrated. It is not done in the interest of the people. It is not done in the interest of the country. It is done for self-interest, so that they bring their loyalists closer and they continue to reign, because it's no longer governance. It is reigning. It is a monarchy. Even if, like in the case of Rwanda, the country, analyzing it, it looks like President Paul Kagame has done quite well in terms of governance, but well is relative. Good governance is relative. Yes, compared to other parts of Africa, Rwanda seems to be working. But if the fundamentals are not in place, no matter how great the system is, it means that there's potential abuse without any way to check and balance his leadership. So these are some of the issues. Now, of course, when these coups happened, countries like Equatorial Guinea will be concerned. Countries like Cameroon will be concerned. Countries like the Republic of Congo will be concerned, because these are These are countries where the leaders have continued to sit tight in government. So just to mention that the reshuffling, of course, it shows that they are concerned, but it also shows even deeper that these leaders are still not willing to learn or allow democracy to thrive in their nations. Then moving back to the people's responsibility. Oftentimes, what is called democracy in Africa, in many countries in Africa, is actually there's a concept of electocracy, whereby the people are only involved in government during election season. So they need you, and you just see it play out in many African countries. The people are just there so that when it's time for an election cycle, their thumbs are printed on the ballot, or they cast their ballot, and then bye-bye, see you later, 4 years, we'll talk again. The people are not involved in the process of governance. The people are not consulted. It's not government for the people, by the people, for the people. It is government elected by the people for the elites. So we need to rethink the democracy that we practice on the African continent. That's something else. And the people, the office of the citizen being the most powerful office, must begin to take its position. Active citizenship. Begin to hold your elected leaders to account. A number of people don't know who their local government chairmen are, don't know who their representatives are. The only thing they know is when it's 4 years' time, you find a way to ensure that you are settled on elections, and we'll see you in 4 years' time. Democracy will not thrive in these conditions. And just to say finally, with regards to the Niger situation, again, it's great kudos to the president, that's President Bola Tinubu, and the chairman of ECOWAS, in terms of saying that they would explore all diplomatic options. It means that he's listening. It means that the agitations of the people living in the north, the Muslim community, and other leaders, he's listening to what people are saying, and that's quite critical and important. What we are hoping, though, is that after negotiations and after conversations and dialogue, Niger would be willing to partner on this diplomatic route, because it doesn't look like it currently. He already talked about the fact that war doesn't benefit anyone, citing the example of Ukraine, citing the example of countries who are in war situations. So it is important to know that for those who push the narrative of let's go, military action, we have to go to war, war is not the option. War is not an option in this case, has been said. It's too expensive, we can't afford it, humanitarian crisis on our hands. And so we are hoping that the president will continue to explore the diplomatic channels.